You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You only get to choose which price you pay.
Success is the metric, passion is the energy, purpose is the posture.
If your role changes, your purpose and identity shouldn't collapse. So with that being said, we have talked about the myths of purpose. We've kind of done a comparison, purpose versus role versus identity. Let's really dive in now as we wrap this up on what purpose truly means.
Reflecting on this, I feel like there's three words that are commonly used synonymously, and they shouldn't be. And it's success, passion, and purpose. Success is the metric. Passion is the energy. Purpose is the posture.
That's good.
Purpose is generous even during the most financially hard times.
Yeah.
Purpose loves people through the hardest of times.
Yeah.
Looking at it that way, like it's not purpose isn't something to get to. It's just the state to be in.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's our challenge for us to use our imagination to say, okay, I'm going to put myself in a scenario where I imagine myself losing my job. Maybe the economy collapses. Maybe the industry I work in is just no longer relevant and it disappears. And I have to go back to square one. Would I be okay? If I am, do I really know who I am? And can I still feel peace in that moment?
Yeah.
And if you can't imagine yourself being able to say, you know what? This is not at all what I'd hoped for or planned for. But I know who I am. I know which direction I'm going to go to from here, from the very bottom. And I still have so much to be thankful for. If you can imagine yourself saying that, you have a good awareness and a good relationship of who you are and with yourself.
And we don't want to set the unreal expectation of, like, let's say your role got stripped from you.
Yeah.
We're not saying to be like, all right.
Yeah, like,
no, that doesn't change.
It's all fine.
It's like,
what's that meme where it's on fire? It's like, everything's fine.
Elmo on fire or whatever.
Everything's fine.
That's not what we're getting at. Because, yeah, man.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's good, yeah.
If your role or circumstances change or get taken, you have to allow yourself to feel that too. Like,
right.
Working for the church, I was actually offered a stepping stone that would basically work me up through the church. So, like, I was given like a month-long series to preach over, which was big. The day I had that meeting where they told me that, big news, awesome news. The second I left that office, I felt like God was saying, you need to step down from your position. And I was like, no way, dude. Like, I'm
not giving this up.
Yeah, like this
is mine.
Yeah, like this was everything we've been working towards.
But how did you handle that?
Dude, that was hard. Just because it was like, okay, at that time, before videography was necessarily even like a solid option, because I did have that experience, and it was like the videography was growing on me, but at that time I was like, I'm going to be a youth pastor. I want to go start my own church. I want to go do this. So to have that stripped, it was miserable. And so I really had to lean on my people at the time to push me through that. But I'm really glad I didn't just move on to the next thing. Yeah, like there was some church hurt that still was there after. But I'm glad I didn't carry that to where I am now. I would have had to. There's a grieving process when you lose something.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly okay to take time away because that's what life does, man. Like, you get knocked down, but your purpose is your why for getting back up.
Right. But I've seen that without purpose, without a good relationship with yourself, without knowing your true identity, I've seen pain push people to being lost. And I mean like feeling lost, like since they don't have that, since they lost that, they don't know where to go.
And that's where I was.
Yeah, and I say that I've been there as well. Mm-hmm. So in that, you are most certainly able to experience, and you need to give yourself permission to grieve and mourn losing not only just people, but like that. If you lost an opportunity of something that you were so excited about, it's like grieving losing someone you love. There's a mourning process, and you do need to go through that. Mm-hmm. And through that process, it also helps you have an opportunity to say, why does this hurt so much?
Right.
And then we can begin questioning those things. But having that foundation, and our hope is for myself, for you, and for everybody that's listening, is that if we can do the work up front before we lose those things, we have a foundation to say, hey, man, that hurts. And this is hard. But since I know who I am, I know other opportunities are coming. And it gives us that chance to say, but this is now an opportunity.
Right.
Instead of saying it's just over. I felt so lost before thinking, well, that's just it. Because I had put my identity in that instead of understanding it was just a role.
Yes.
And that's where questioning, doing the work to where we find the information to help us get true definitions of things, and we don't start blurring those lines and mixing them up incorrectly.
Right. And that's why it's so important to have people in your circle that truly know who you are and bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
For those moments whenever you get kicked down, for people to come back to you and say, no, this is who you are. You know, we love you. Sorry you're going through that. This is who you are.
Yeah.
Get back up on your feet.
Yeah.
Again.
The people that love you the most will tell you what you need to hear, no matter how much it hurts.
Exactly. And it's the same thing for me. So growing up, like I was conditioned to be very against like mental health and anti-therapy and all that stuff.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Exactly. And there was a billboard outside of town, and it was like, it's okay to not be okay. And I thought about that for a long time, because at that time I was not okay. Yes, it is okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there.
Yeah.
Without some type of purpose, it is hard to get yourself out of that position.
Right. Because where do you go? Like, what direction do you go?
Someone told me this one time, like, if you're depressed, go hurt somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I'm bringing this up just to say, like, if you are in a low spot, and if like being in a low spot doesn't mean you have to go start a charity organization and start feeding. No, you don't have to do some big grand gesture to find purpose.
Yeah.
Just go take care of somebody else. Go buy somebody else lunch.
Yeah.
That's
simple. If your friend's moving, say, hey, I can show up and help you lift a couch.
Yeah.
Any of the basic thing. Yeah.
Your purpose will build in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, moral of the story is just, if you're in a spot like where you've had something taken from you and you're going through the grieving process, that's okay. Don't stay there, but also don't think you have to, the next thing you do has to be some grand thing. It doesn't have to be.
No.
Because the greater the expectation you put on yourself of what you have to accomplish, the less likely you're actually going to pull through with it, because it's the same reason why New Year's resolutions don't work. Because you give yourself a long checklist of things you got to get done. Just start with one thing. Baby steps are still steps.
Yeah. That's super good. Just start small. You've shared with me so many times, Jordan Peterson, pick a dragon you can slay.
Yep.
Increase your efficiency at handling a dragon that is manageable. Increase your skills of being able to be in that fight and overcome. And then after you do that, move on to the next size dragon and keep growing. And then you'll look back and realize after a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, once again, not comparing yourself to anybody else, but compared to where you started, you will realize, wow, I've grown so much.
Right.
One of the points here for purpose that I really like is purpose isn't a destination, it's a direction. It's revealed over time, shaped through consistency, and developed through struggle. You don't need to have it all figured out to start walking in it. And that really tied in to what you were sharing about not having to be the master or having to do some grand thing or be somebody that's just all put together. You just got to start walking in that direction.
Have you seen the movie The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse? It's a little short 30-minute video on Amazon.
No, but I've heard somebody talk about it.
Basically, the whole movie is this boy is lost in the woods trying to find his way home, and he encounters these animals that can talk to him, and they have really deep, reflective conversations. But there's a point in the movie where the boy they're in the middle of the woods, and he's looking around, and he's like, I can't see a way out. And the horse looks to him and says, do you see where you can take your first step? Then just take that one.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, too, is because you want to see what that finish line looks like.
I was just about to say the same thing. Yeah.
But I think that's part of the surprise that God wants us to experience. Because if we had everything exactly the way we wanted it would-'t be enough. Because our reality is temporary things.
Yeah.
So it'll never be enough. And you just got to take that first step.
Yeah, and without that effort and pursuit of it, it'll never mean enough either.
Right.
The value increases in direct proportion to the amount of sacrifice needed to obtain that.
Yeah, that's good.
That's where I go back to God having expectations and unconditional love. And that's where I have a struggle with prosperity gospel. Jesus lived in the poorest area in the world at the time, one of them. Was an apprentice to his earthly dad, Joseph, carpenter, and then once again lived homeless, basically, bouncing around to do his ministry, and then was crucified. There was nothing at all that was convenient, given, provided. Now, don't get me wrong, the Lord was with him in providing things he needed, miracles, all of those things.
Right.
But as far as earthly conveniences and comforts, there's nothing about that story that communicates to me that God is going to be consistently watching out to remove obstacles from my path as I'm walking through life oh, thanks God, I didn't have to step over that. I appreciate that. Oh, you removed that wall for me? I didn't have to climb over that. Thank you very much.
Right.
And I'm just strolling along. I wholeheartedly believe, and there's nothing in the Bible that says this, but just watching the theme throughout the Bible and what people have gone through, especially the ones that had a lot of zeal in pursuing God, they had some of the toughest obstacles to endure. And I believe that God at times, that my path could be clear, and at times God drops a big boulder right in front of me before I take my next step and be like, here's your opportunity to see my love, see my support, see my provision, to grow, to lean on me, to see opportunity instead of struggle, in the hopes that just as I try to challenge my own children to grow in the way they need to, that when they're on their own, they have the tools, character, morals necessary to make a good decision when nobody else is watching.
Do you think God puts the boulders in your way?
I think he does at times, most certainly, as far as growth and being in a chance to have to depend on him. But I think the majority of it comes from just the fallen state we live in and my own choices that I make.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I think there was definitely a lot of moments in my life where I would come across a boulder or an obstacle, and I would accuse God of putting it in my way, or just saying God gave me this challenge, but really it was the consequences of my own actions. Right.
You had created your own hurdle to jump over.
Right. But I also see that as, because it's necessary, you have to face that. But through the process of facing that, I feel like there's multiple different options you can take. And I feel like if you can look at those moments and align yourself with your purpose, take God with you on that walk, you'll stop walking around the boulder repeatedly, and you'll find the direction that you need to go.
That's good.
Through prayer, through reading the Bible, through, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because really, like, what it comes down to too is a perspective. Is it a boulder, or is it an opportunity for me to break a cycle?
Once again, yeah, and seeing that as an opportunity as opposed to an obstacle changes everything.
Right.
And you talked about direction, and purpose is a compass, not a blueprint. It helps guide how you show up today, not just where you end up tomorrow.
Right.
We need to plan as if we're going to live 100 years, but live as if we're going to die tomorrow. So when we talk about purpose and being able to be genuine and authentic and enjoy the moment each day, being reminded that time is fleeting and that we are but a mist and vapor helps us think and spend time reflecting on how can I manage where I need to be where I need and want to be in 5, 10, 20 years, all those things.
Right.
But also not put too much value on them that it overwhelms me and robs me of today.
Yes, that's really big.
And it's a challenge, because if you put all of your value and identity and your expectations into saying it has to be this way when I get there, it's hard not to feel that fear of making sure everything's going right to build that future you want. I mean, I may not see tomorrow, so I can't put too much value on what I'm going to be doing 20, 30, 40 years from now. Right. Because it's not even guaranteed.
So what does purpose look like in those seasons of uncertainty? Because like right now, like it's easy for me to define what purpose is because I have a lot of evidence around me, you know, like there's a lot of things in motion. I'm not saying busy equals purpose. That's not what I'm saying. What does purpose look like in those hard moments?
And that's where it comes in for me, of doing that work up front about knowing who you are.
Yeah.
You know, my example is somebody that could be potentially going through a scenario where they've been in a terrible accident, paralyzed from the neck down, completely removing any physical opportunity to move and do and accomplish some of the basic things they've done for their whole life. How do you then say, what is my purpose in this type of uncertainty? Mm-hmm. You know, and I know that's a little more of extreme of, you know, work and stuff, maybe a little slower and things like that. But if you know who you are, if you know your value, you never expect anybody else to have to tell it to you in order to feel that. It's not fleeting.
Yeah,
it's constantly residing in you, of saying, I don't have to have, you know, a bonus or paycheck or extra high deposit this month, showing that I'm walking in my purpose, making me feel like I'm being successful. I am that regardless. I am full of purpose, and I can enjoy that regardless of what my circumstances are.
So would this be a good example? So going back to my story about like finding my passion for videography. So that first video I put out when we were watching it at worship that morning during summer camp, you know, there's like 600 kids there. There's a bunch of youth leaders. But everybody was so excited when that video came on. Everybody was like, oh, that's me on the video. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I attached their reactions to my feeling of fulfillment. So that whenever I went out and I started doing social media or wedding videos, releasing them digitally, like on YouTube or Facebook, social media, suddenly I was doing the same thing without the room. So I was sitting in my office watching views go up, and it was like there was no cheers, there was no there was no excitement. So that was something too where I really had to fine tune the purpose behind it. Was it to get the reactions of people? Am I making these videos for that? That was a whole other lane I found myself going down, was trying to shoot content that people would I was producing content for the viewers is what I started doing. It wasn't until I started producing content for the business that we got more views, which was such a weird, like...
That's a great distinguishing factor for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because just to stay on that example, like, people want to support the business, so you have to represent the business that best you can.
That's good.
We're representatives of Christ, so we have to represent it the best we can.
Man, that is huge. And how big is the struggle between wanting to represent our own selves, to receive the accolades, the praise, to impress people with our talents and thoughts and ideas, instead of deferring to bringing that attention to Christ.
For me, like, there was this false sense of humility, at least, because whenever I would when I would get recognized for something, you meet people that are like, when they get recognized, they're like, oh, give it all to God. And is it wrong to say, I'm deserving of it too? But also, like, because I feel like there's got to be some, like, boundary to where you can be grateful for the recognition that you're receiving.
Yes.
But also saying, you know what, like, I couldn't have done this without God, I don't know, like, what am I trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, being thankful that somebody recognized your talents, efforts, and your gifts, and then ultimately saying, now I'm going to recognize that this was ultimately provided to me by God.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm his creation. I am thankful for that. I get to experience it. I have worked hard. I have been intentional of serving people and helping and doing. And ultimately, it's because I'm following Christ's example, and he gave me these gifts and abilities.
So like one of the businesses I work with, it's a music venue. So like there have been times, like, I've gone out on site during one of a music night, and they see me with my camera, so they'll come up. I've had it a few times where people will compliment me on the videos. Mm-hmm. There have been moments that I've been complimented, and it felt like it was more divine than just like a normal human interaction. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. So you felt like your Heavenly Father saying to you through someone, just like we're vessels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So somebody was being obedient to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be kind and considerate and give him a compliment for his work.
Yes.
Because they were ultimately potentially holding themselves accountable to what God was calling them to do. Yeah.
And I think some people are that tuned enough in their identity to where it doesn't necessarily have to be God giving them a thought to, and that's a whole other conversation. But people walking very aligned with their identity will just naturally do that.
Yes.
So in a way, it's still a reflection of God using them as a vessel to share that with you.
And God showing,
right?
Yeah, God showing you his love. Yeah. Yes, it's the body of Christ.
Yeah.
That is somebody operating in their role as the body of Christ. Most certainly. Man, that's a really good point about what you said and shared there. And today we have talked about the myths about purpose. We've also compared purpose to identity and role, even how it differs from success, metrics, feedback from people, expectations, and all of those things, and then really diving down to what purpose means and having a clear definition of, that it is a compass. It guides us. It's not a checkered flag. It's not a trophy to put on a shelf that somebody else has to recognize. It's something that resides deep within us that we get to enjoy and benefit from. And having an accurate definition of what that means leads us to a place where we can have that peace operating in it, no matter who notices it, because we get to enjoy it. Yeah. And so, man, I'm thankful to go over these different things and really wrap up today with what purpose means, because even in our title of Price of Purpose, we have to know what it is that we're paying the price for. And I want to make sure that for all of us, it's something that is worthwhile, that transcends us as individuals and is for a much bigger purpose, like having a kingdom mindset.
Thank you guys for tuning in this week for all three parts of our conversation about defining purpose. We hope you found it beneficial. If you did, leave us a like, subscribe, drop a comment of what helped you the most. This is part of a 10-week series, so we're gonna go through the trenches of defining purpose and how to apply it into our lives. And we hope you'll join us for that. So again, like, subscribe. We'll see you on the flip side.